Today we're going to be learning about box and whisker plots and how to represent data using a box and whisker plot. So I'd like you to open up the quiz for this session on join.quizzes.com and enter the game code that I provided for this recording, and make sure to use your first and last name as your nickname. Otherwise, I won't know that it's you. So even if you just use your first name, I won't know that it's you. So make sure that you type in both your first and last name when it asks for your nickname. So let's begin by talking about what a box and whisker plot is, which it's a plot that's useful for handling a large data set. It could be used for any kind of data set, but you can use it to represent a lot of numbers all at once. And what it does is allow you to draw informal conclusions about how two variables are related to each other. So when we look at our box and whisker plot, we're obviously not going to show all of the numbers from the data set. We're only going to show specific statistics about the data set, and then seeing those statistics can help us to make those informal conclusions. You're going to see as we go through this that your box and whisker plot is going to have the median on it, two quartile values, so that they're called quartiles, the upper quartile and lower quartile, and the lowest and greatest values in the distributions, and those are going to be called our extreme values. Okay, so that's going to help you with question 1 on your quiz on Quizzes. So if you have that open right now and have entered the code, then you can actually answer question 1 at this point. And so if you'd like to do that, you can pause the recording right here and answer that question. Okay, now moving on how to make our box and whisker plot, I'm going to put up a data set here, and the first step is to put our data set in order from lowest to greatest. So I'm going to do the hard work for you here and put it all down. Make sure that as you do this, you're very careful to include every number in your new list from lowest to highest. Okay, so here's that data set again, and the next step is to find the median of the data set. And remember that the median is the value exactly in the middle. And so the way that we find that is we cross off numbers on the left and right, 34, 91, until we make it to the middle. And we need to make it exactly to the middle. So I've crossed off, looks like 7 numbers there and 7 numbers there. So the middle number is the number 68. So our median for this data set is 68. But I want to pause here and just ask you, how do you find the median when there is an even number of values in your data set? Because sometimes there's not a clearly defined middle. Like, for example, in this random example I put down here, if we cross off numbers till we get to the middle, we end up with 12 and 15. If we cross those off, there's nothing in between. So the answer to this question is to add up the two numbers and divide by 2, or find the average of those two middle numbers. You can only have one median value. So for this, we would get 27 divided by 2. So if we did that little problem there, we'd end up with 13.5, and that would be the median of this data set. So add up the two middle numbers and divide by 2, or find the average or mean of the two middle numbers. All right, so you should be set to answer question 2 if you are going through your quiz. So if you need to pause the recording, you can do so now. All right, so now that we've found our median, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line either on my number line or above it, and that's going to be part of my box and whisker plot. And then we're ready to do the next step, which is to find the lower quartile. The lower quartile is the median of the lower half of the data set. So here's our data set again. My median was 68, and there's kind of a line through 68. We do not include that number when finding the median of the lower half of the data set. So now I'm only looking at these numbers, 18 all the way up to 61. And I'm going to find that middle number again because I'm just finding the median. And I end up with 52. And at this point, I'd like you to think about how we found that number, the lower quartile, and answer question 3 on your quiz. All right, and then we're going to draw a line over 52 because that's where our lower quartile was. Sometimes in a course it might call this the quartile 1 or Q1. It means the same thing as lower quartile. Okay, let's do the upper quartile now. It's very similar. Here was our data set. Again, we're not using the number 68 or the median when looking at the upper half of the data set. And we're going to find the median of those numbers on the right side of the data set. And so our median here ends up being 87. So the upper quartile is 87. And I'm going to put a line there. So we're almost done with our box and whisker plot. This is actually the box part of the box and whisker plot. And then our last step is to find the upper and lower extremes, which is my favorite part because it's the easiest thing to do. You just look for the lowest and highest numbers. So the lower extreme of this data set is just 18, and the upper extreme is 100. So just the lowest and highest numbers of the data set. And we notate those on our box and whisker plot using dots. So there's a dot above 18 and a dot above 100. And those form our whiskers. So we can draw in the box in the middle. Notice the box has a line somewhere in the middle of it because that was the median value. And then we draw in our whiskers along the sides. And that is a finished box and whisker plot. Okay, so you should be ready for question 4 on your quiz. So take a minute here to do that. And lastly, I'd like to analyze this plot a little bit and talk about why it looks like it does. So first of all, ask yourself this: is the plot symmetrical? And why or why not? So if you need to pause the recording and think about that for a minute, now would be a great time. So why or why not is this plot symmetrical? Now, if you remember our data set, it wasn't necessarily evenly spaced. If you consider how the numbers are, it's not really evenly spaced. In fact, if you think about it, you know, the numbers less than 50 all lie right here. And the numbers greater than 50 up to 100 all lie right here. And so that's kind of one way to consider it. So 18 and 27 and 34, those are the only lower numbers of the data set. And then all of the other numbers are quite a bit higher than that in general. And so that's why this box and whisker plot sort of sits over here and kind of leans to the right, if you will. And so that's kind of why our box and whisker plot is not symmetrical. And you also want to think about what each section represents. You know, you've got a section here. You've got a section here in green. I'm just kind of outlining it so you can see what I'm pointing to. You've got a section here in yellow, and then you've got a section over here in red. And the way we found those sections is we divided up our data set. We divided it here, and then we cut it in half again on each side. And so that blue section, whoops, we need a blue here. Our blue section is this section of the data set. Our green section is here. Our yellow section is here. And our red section is here. It's kind of like we had a piece of paper and we folded it in half, and then we folded it in half again, and we got equal pieces of the data set. But on a number line, it's not all evenly spaced. So each section of the plot represents a quarter of the data, but you can't necessarily look at that just the way that the whiskers are compared with the pieces of the box. They don't all look the same size. But as far as the data set is concerned, that's how they're related to each other. So at this point, you're ready to do number 5 on your quiz. And then we're going to do one more problem. So once you're ready for that, go ahead and unpause your recording if you're completing the quiz. All right, now I think it helps to see one last example, just so that you can kind of solidify your understanding here. So here's a data set of 6 values, actually. I think I meant to include 7, but that's okay. So we're going to go ahead and sort of order up our data set here in order. And then we're going to find our median. That's the first step. So the median is going to be right in between 20 and 24. So it has an even number of data values, so we've got to add up the 20 and the 24 to get 44. And then we divide that by 2, which would give us 22. So that's the number halfway between 20 and 24. Now I kind of need to number this number line here with something good. And there's not a lot of tick marks, so maybe I want to go by 4s. And I'll just go ahead and start it at 12 since that's the lowest number. And I'm just going to go by 4s to make sure that I get all of my numbers on the data set. On the number line. Now I went a little high here, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be the same for each person. Okay, so at 22, I've got my median, so I'm going to go ahead and identify that with a line. Now I'm going to look at the lower half of the data set, right here. Notice that 22 was that median, so that's the number that I'm not including. And for my lower quartile, my middle number is 18. So I'm going to put a line on my box and whisker plot there. And then I do the same thing for the upper half. I find my upper quartile, or Q3, which is 32. So there's a line here for my box and whisker plot. And then the very last thing I do is identify my lower and upper extremes, which are 12 and 36. And remember, those are just dots to represent the whiskers. So my box looks something like this. I got lots of different colors here just to showcase each piece that we found. But that's that box and whisker plot all worked out. Okay, well, I hope that this has helped you with box and whisker plots, and if you have any questions for me, feel free to let me know, and thank you for watching. And don't forget to finish up that quiz if you still need to. Have a great day!